And good day. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Are the lefties losing it? We're stealing a little bit from Sky News Australia, that whole idea of lefties losing it. I really think they're kind of disconnected from reality. The sky is falling. You can only yell that the sky is falling. You can only cry wolf so many times and have people still take you seriously. And every time I turn around, the sky is falling. There's a wolf. And you cry wolf. And yet, the economy seems to keep chugging along. Now, recently, the stock market, after what Trump declared a day of liberation, meaning we were no longer going to be subjected to the unfair tariff deals that are happening. Because it's not like out of a vacuum, we decided that we were going to put on tariffs. We have been at a disadvantage, meaning a trade deficit, since 1975, so more than 50 years. Largely that happened because after World War II, we were the only superpower for a while, the last man standing. Because we were so incredibly prosperous, other countries, in order to try to get ahead, imposed huge tariffs on us. For instance, our friends to the north, they have a 250% tariff on dairy, meaning that because of that, we almost can't send anything that's a dairy product to Canada. So they're protecting their industries. Well, all of those other countries seem to prosper. India has huge tariffs against us, China, Japan, Germany, frankly, Europe. And here we are. They've become highly successful countries. Of course, they have their problems just like we do. But they become highly successful countries. Largely, I would say, because of the trade advantage, the protectionism. Tariffs are essentially protectionism, but they keep jobs at home. Our elites have abandoned us, meaning the working class, abandoned the idea of manufacturing. Well, if we don't make anything, we become a service economy. That's a large part of what the U.S. is. We're now a service economy and tech. And I believe that we're missing this key element. It used to be easier to be middle class. We had one person that worked, meaning a couple was married and one person worked, almost always the man. And that allowed for them to have a middle class living. And now it's two people that have to work to have a middle class living. And the left's screaming, the sky is falling. Oh my God. Oh my God, the sky is falling. The stock market is now down. It's still dramatically above 2021 and 2022 levels. Stock market goes up and down. It has a historic average of 9%. A lot of the left is talking about, how we imposed tariffs by the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1929, but it didn't get implemented till 30. And it wasn't really rolling until 31, meaning we had the stock market crash and then the Great Depression the stock market crash happened in 29. The Depression went on from 29 through basically the start of World War II, largely because FDR wanted to control and socialize everything. I believe he made profound mistakes. Was he trying to save people? Yeah, I believe he was a patriot, but I think he blew it in getting the economy running again because he wanted to control it. So I don't think it was that tariff act that the left is screaming about. I think it was the fact that the stock market crashed. And now the people that are worried, that are screaming about the economy tanking and recession, you know, some of the loudest voices aside from the lefties? Why? It's the people that run the stock market. But they were responsible for the crash in the first place. Doesn't make a lot of sense. You can read a great article by Victor Davis Hanson about this. Just look up Victor Davis Hanson and tariffs. If you don't know Victor Davis Hanson, my local people, you need to know. He's a local guy here in California, lives in Selma, historian, pretty bright guy. I regularly read his stuff and hope that I get a small fraction of his wisdom and knowledge from it. So if we go back to that idea of lefties are kind of losing it, they're doubling down on insanity. You know, men can be women and women can be men. No, not at all. We're inherently different. No matter what surgery or chemicals you take, you're still different. But they want us to ignore that. Oh, well, we don't need borders, and we should pay welfare for the privilege of having somebody sneak over our border. Why, we should reward them by giving them Medi-Cal, which basically is California's version of Medicaid. We should put them on Social Security. No, I think those are all insane ideas. If we're going to import citizens, if we're going to allow people to immigrate here, and I hope it's only legally, that's the only thing I'm okay with, we want them to be productive citizens, not part of the dependent class. But the left seems to only care about, well, potential new voters. The left, I don't know, their hypocrisy seems to know no limits. Everything's a crisis. Again, they're crying wolf. Oh, this will be the end of democracy. Well, we had 4 years of Trump. Did democracy end? Number two, we're not actually a democracy. We're a representative republic that has divided government, meaning if there's divided government, there's divided power, so that the minority is protected. They scream that women lost all their rights. No, in certain states you have a different ability to get an abortion, or maybe no ability, but you do have the ability to get it, and you could move to the state of your choice. I happen to still be living in commie California, but it's because I'm fighting to change it and my parents are here. I could go somewhere else where freedom actually rings, as opposed to Gavin just giving lip service. Now, speaking of Gavin, he recently talked about tariffs, and I think he was unhinged. And as is typical of Gavin Newsom, he lies about, well, pretty much anything that's convenient for him. He talked about California being this huge manufacturing state. No, we don't make very much in California, aside from the breadbasket of California, which is agriculture. So we make food products, but outside of that, California doesn't produce much. They do their best to suppress our energy, meaning something as crazy as if you want an oil well and it's in a field full of oil wells and you want to put one, let's say, 50 feet away from an existing oil well, and the whole field is oil wells. You have to get a new environmental impact report, a new study of the water table. Isn't that kind of crazy? And it takes you several years to put in another oil well 50 feet away from the oil well that's already there. It's because they don't want us to be energy independent. They want us to be a dependent class. I truly think that that is one of the goals that they scream about now, billionaires, largely because so many of the left's politicians are millionaires. So we can't go after the millionaires anymore. We have to go after the billionaires. They're the new evil. Because, for instance, AOC, who screams about millionaires, now she screams about billionaires. She's a millionaire. Bernie, 3-mansion Bernie. He's got not only 3 mansions, but several $1 million. Now, how does a socialist, a man of the people, get that rich? Certainly richer than I am. Doesn't add up, does it? They keep saying, well, these tariffs are going to destroy the economy. Have you read The Art of the Deal, folks? Trump asks for more than he actually expects that he can get. And I get that technically Congress is the only one that should be able to raise something like a tariff. That's constitutional. But Congress through various laws that they've written have largely, since about 1913 when they put in the income tax, federal income tax, that was supposed to be, it'll never be more than 1 or 2 or 3%. I believe that's the 16th Amendment. When they put that in, tariffs stopped being used so much by the United States. It used to be our major source of funding for the government. Now it's not. Well, when that happened, Congress kind of just went, yeah, the president can do whatever they want. They gave up their ability to control tariffs to the president. And this isn't just Trump. This is every president. The only difference is Trump is willing to go, wait, this is unfair and wrong. How is it that China doesn't allow our products into their country without extreme tariffs? And we largely let them in. So the sky is falling. And they're talking about how Trump's going to tank the economy. Are you aware that 70 countries now have reached out to the U.S. about eliminating tariffs? Canada was talking tough. And then they caved. They've now caved twice on this. They caved with the pretty boy. And now they've got a new, for hopefully short time, Mark Carney, Prime Minister. And he talked tough, like, oh yeah, we're going to fight these tariffs. Well, we're the biggest economy on the block. And if we're not being treated fairly, why should we volunteer to let them put all these tariffs on our products going into their country? We don't have free trade with Canada or Mexico. But Canada caved. Now in Brussels, I forget the name of the woman that is in charge of the EU. Think of the EU is like our federal government here in the U.S. And then they've got individual countries, which you'd call states. It's not an exact analogy, but it's close. So I don't know where this leaves us, except that it seems to me that a lot of this isn't actually going to happen. All of this, the sky is falling, isn't going to happen because our president, he's bargaining. Look, Trump might successfully drive a wedge between Vietnam, a totally communist country, and the bigger communist country that largely has controlled Vietnam, called China, because Vietnam is tired of being told what to do by China, and China wants to rule the world. Vietnam has reached out to us and said, hey, how about on both sides we have 0 tariffs? Hey, that could work out. India's reached out to us and said, hey, we need to come to some sort of agreement, some sort of deal. The left was screaming about how Trump is on the golf course. I read several articles about that. And what was interesting to me is in between hitting the ball, when you have to jump in the golf cart or if you walk, I'd assume Trump's probably a golf cart guy. Nonetheless, in between, he kept taking calls from heads of state around the world that wanted to come to some sort of deal. So his throwing something out there that seemed a little bit unreasonable made a huge difference. By the way, the lady in charge, my producer, is nice enough to look it up for me. It's Ursula von der Leyen. I don't know if I got the pronunciation right there, but close enough. And keep in mind, Brussels is no friend of anybody that's even a moderate. They are hardcore globalist leftists. And they want control. Matter of fact, they're not allowing their individual states to run elections the way they see fit. Now, we're not talking about what happens here like in California where we don't have voter ID. The EU, they have voter ID. The EU does not allow vote by mail. France hasn't allowed it for more than 40 years. England doesn't allow it. Yet we have this cheat by mail system here in California. Do you hear the left screaming about that at all? How is it that we've now got two great Satans to the left? Well, maybe three. One would be Trump, two would be Elon, and three would be simply capitalism, the success and freedom that we have here in the United States. You're aware that you're a racist. You're an evil person if you're for capitalism, if you're actually patriotic and believe in this country. It just blows my mind. They have lost sanity. They've also lost sanity in that they think the solution to crime is to simply back off and let criminals do whatever they want. Oh, yeah, well, murder used to be bad, but I guess murder's still bad. But, if he had a tough life, we need to, give him everything we can, every chance, and, he could be back out. Well, we've got several clips. We're going to go with Swalwell first? All right. I think this is a great example of lefties losing it, separated from reality. 201k. You'll see in just a minute.
Because as you stand here right now, we have gone from a Trump slump to a Trump train wreck. We are going into a red recession. Our 401ks are 201ks. Our costs at Walmart and Home Depot and Target, where 4 out of 5 of the things we buy are from overseas, are going up. And where is Donald Trump? He's golfing. So to Donald Trump, I say, get your ass off the golf course and face the people.
So that was Representative Eric Swalwell. Let's see. How is it that all the prices went up just recently? There was this thing that happened. We passed the Inflation Reduction Act. We printed a ton of money. We put that money into government rather than into anything productive, because government doesn't create money except that it prints it. But that doesn't actually make more money. It makes a larger numerical count, but it doesn't actually create value. It's the private industry that creates value. And so essentially what happens is we devalued our money. Your dollar doesn't go as far. That's inflation. And except for the last, January 20th, now we're not even to March 20th. Why, there was a different president. I know who it was from folks on the internet. It was Trader Joe, where everything's for sale. And so he spent boatloads of money on Ukraine. He spent boatloads of money on government. He let people work from home so that entire huge block-sized buildings are empty. And then he printed a crazy number of dollars. And they didn't even actually have to physically print them. They digitally add zeros to bank accounts. They had to print some of it. But that's how insane it is, the idea that government and the Fed can just print money. It's not okay. What about this idea that we're going to cut Social Security? Well, the only indication that we're going to cut Social Security is if you're getting Social Security illegally, it's fraud. Why? You shouldn't get Social Security, right? Well, cutting that for a system that is going to fail because it's essentially a Ponzi scheme. They've already spent the money from that supposed trust account. Well, if you're removing people from the system that shouldn't be on the system, then isn't it going to last longer? So in that sense, yes, Social Security is being cut, but they're saying Social Security is going to be eliminated. Your Medicare is going to be taken away. Well, again, if you're here illegally, like here in California, and suddenly you're on Medicaid, how is it that you have rights of regular citizens? They're still using lawfare against Trump. The left again, they've lost a connection to reality. We're going to go ahead and take our first break. Well, I hope we're going to take a break someday. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. Thank you to everybody that's listening on social media. I really appreciate the fact that so many of you have been commenting lately. That's important. I really appreciate the fact that so many of you have been sharing out my videos, particularly on Rumble, but also on Facebook. I got a lot of loyal people on Facebook. I hope this message makes a difference. I'm trying to shift the culture, and I appreciate you helping me shift that culture, because I can't do it alone. None of us can do it alone. We have to work together to try to change this country. Let's go ahead and come back. And this is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. We're going to go ahead and jump into a piece of audio from the beloved Gavin Newsom. The man's a piece of work. And
Because
as you know, he's pretty good at talking as long as you don't analyze his words. He sounds good as he says it. He sounds convincing, unless he starts doing the whole weird, crazy hand thing. So for my radio viewers, you're just going to have to imagine that my hands just had a spasm. For everybody else, you know what I mean. He overemphasizes everything, so you can't really believe what he has to say. And he kind of slows down. So there's nothing genuine about the man. All right, we're going to go ahead and hear from Gavin.
Tariffs do not represent all Americans, particularly those that I represent here in the fifth largest economy in the world, the state of California. We value international trade. We value our manufacturing base, the largest manufacturing economy in the United States of America. We look forward to continuing to strengthen those ties, strengthen those bonds. I'll remind all our international trading partners, California is a stable trading partner, and we hope you consider that as it relates to California-made products.
So let's say we're we're the fifth largest economy. I'll give you that one. But what is it we manufacture in California? Not a whole lot. As a matter of fact, we had this plant from this car company that was really pretty innovative called Tesla. And because California was not willing to work with Tesla, because California really doesn't believe in freedom. The left doesn't believe in freedom. They don't believe in the First Amendment. You know, even Gavin was calling for censorship during COVID. Now he'd lie to your face if you called him on it. But you can find clips. Oh, yeah, that's misinformation. Well, the answer to misinformation is more free speech, not the government deciding the winners and losers. So did you get that? The answer is more free speech. The answer is having more outlets and more possibilities. For instance, if you go to listen to Fox News, well, I tend to think they're more correct, technically more right, more on the right than, say, CNN. There's certain things they just don't bring up. You go to CNN, there's other categories of things they never bring up. For instance, Fox News, you'll hear all about what's going on with Doge. You'll hear all about all that money that's being saved and those ridiculous programs that are being cut and those government workers that are not really doing anything productive. You go to CNN, and the only thing they talk about with Doge is how Social Security is going to be cut, how Medicaid's going to be cut, how it's going to end democracy as we know it. One of them's telling the truth. But the problem is Both of them are not telling the full truth. Now, we don't have enough time to have the full truth, but the left lives in a world of subjective morality and that there's no real truth. It's my truth. Not the truth, it's my truth. Now, if it's my truth as opposed to the truth, then if I disagree with, say, my producer, it probably never happened, but it could happen. We'd have two different truths. We'd have a battle of realities. Or what if there were some things that we could just say, they're objectively true? That objectively true would be something like, let's see, I'm a guy. Kind of have those guy characteristics, have the right parts, need to shave very regularly. Kind of goes with it. With that, guys tend to process information a little differently than women. Doesn't mean one's better than the other, just means we're different. The left wants to ignore that reality. So they've embraced this idea that there's no such thing as the real truth. It's whatever I want it to be. Why? That's why you can identify as whatever you want. Doesn't matter if it's reasonable. Doesn't matter if it is based in reality. It's like they live in bizarro world. For my comic book fan friends, if you watch Superman or you looked at the Superman comic books, where everything's just a little off. Though I don't know who's giving them their essentially marching orders. We're going to go with, oh, that sounds fun. We're going to do the audio of Elon on tariffs from yesterday.
And Europe can establish a very close partnership. We obviously are, there's an alliance already, but I'm hopeful that there can be a very close relationship with America and Europe. And I'm hopeful, for example, with the tariffs, that at the end of the day, I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America. And that would be that's what I hope occurs. And also more freedom of people to move between Europe and North America, if they wish. If they wish to work in Europe or wish to work in America, they should be allowed to do so, in my view. So that has certainly been my advice to the president.
So I mostly agree with Elon there. I think there's a slippery slope with B1 visas. We needed to try to develop our own workforce, though I get that a certain percentage of the best should be able to travel if they're going to come and be a productive citizen, or even just have a green card and come and be productive to the United States. I don't want to turn people away, but they do need to come through legal channels. The idea that a huge number of the Trade de Aguas, TDA, they were able to come over our border. They're some of the worst criminals. MS-13 also, criminal gang. A whole bunch of them were able to come over the border, and a lot of them came through legal channels, meaning it's kind of legal because Biden did this thing that really, essentially, if you came across the border, turned yourself in, they gave you a court date. They didn't look you up and saw us and went, oh my God, this guy's an MS-13 killer and drug dealer. Or they were from Trade de Aguas, which is from Venezuela. And they were some of the most violent gangs that the world has ever seen. And the Trade de Aguas people took over whole apartment complexes in Colorado. And the left went, oh, it's no big deal. One of the leftist judges said, no, you have to send, because Trump sent off a whole bunch of those criminals to El Salvador, where they have this elite prison for way cheaper than we could imprison them here. I don't have a problem with that. especially because they're not U.S. citizens. If you at least have a green card, if you're here legally, yes, you are at least partially protected by our Constitution, especially if you have a green card. If you're just visiting, not quite as much. With each step as you move towards citizenship, you're more protected. But if you're here illegally and you're a criminal, you need to go. I don't even see how there's any debate on this, and yet the left wants to debate this. Oh no, we need to have sanctuary cities. If you come and arrest the criminals, which we're not going to help you, that's what sanctuary cities essentially do, is they protect not just the illegals, but they protect the criminals, and they make it difficult for law enforcement to go in and help disadvantaged communities. Well, generally, poor communities have more crime. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that, or at least they have more violent crime. And crime is up. As much as the left wanted to say it's down, crime is up. When the FBI came out during Biden's last year and said crime is down, guess what they magically did? They left out several of the key cities, particularly they said violent crime is down in those key cities like New York, Detroit, Chicago, Los Angeles. There's a few more, but you get my point. They left those cities out of the equation when they looked at the percentages and what was going on. Another case of the left has lost its mind. Now, I would love to know who the sheep herder is, because for me, if anybody's my shepherd, it would be the Lord above. But for the left, if you worship government or climate change or transgenderism, who gives you your marching orders? If reality is kind of subjective, if truth is subjective, who gives you your marching orders? Because they all seem to come to the same conclusions. We just recently, April 5th, just a couple days ago, had a day of protest from the left. And they all seem to have signs that largely matched, professionally done. But when moderate and conservative reporters went out to try to talk to them, they either got yelled and screamed at because they don't believe in free speech, they got threatened, or if they were willing to answer questions, very seldom could they even tell you really what a tariff was. Could they really tell you why it was okay to have violence? And I did see a few. There were a few reasonable lefties, but mostly doesn't matter. Elon's the devil, or what government or whoever they're getting their marching orders from claims is the devil. I'd like to go ahead and go to audio 2, Trump talking about China.
Donald Trump's tariffs do not represent all Americans.
The next generation of families, for the first time in our history, are going to be left.
Donald Trump's tariffs do not represent all Americans.
The next generation of families, for the first time in our history, are going to be left off worse than we were. So I have a simple question for you. Don't we deserve better?
Our political system right now is ill prepared for this abuse of power. In fact, our political system enables it.
People at the grassroots level know that the system is not working. They want change. Will the Democratic Party evolve and respond to that change? Your guess is as good as mine.
Coming up on Laura Flanders and Friends, the place where...
Obviously, that was not Trump. That was AOC and Bernie and some angry guy yapping. But they see the world in such a different way. I don't know where they get their marching orders, though. For a while, I thought it was the New York Times and George Soros. I think it's bigger than that, but I don't understand how they can come to the conclusions they do. why everything is, I don't know, it's like it's an emergency. It's not just an emergency. It's an existential emergency when we have a track record with Trump. And mostly when I suffered through that first term, it was rough. I mean, each year I had to pay more in taxes because I made more money, because the economy was good. And I hated giving more money for taxes, but the other side of that means I made more money. In other words, when the economy's good, we're all successful, and the left seems to be willing to tank the economy just so that they can win. In other words, they're not America first. They're their power first. And that seems to be the thing they care about the most. So what do we do with these lefties losing it? Well, there's always going to be a percentage of them, and they're going to show up for protests, particularly when they get paid through places like Act Blue. Act Blue was being paid by U.S. aid. Now, we had a government accounting office before we had Doge, and we had multiple presidents that talked about how we needed to cut waste. Yet, essentially nothing happened. Trump's the first time something happened. And he's trying to make a difference. But this government accounting office, they didn't find the fact that USAID was paying a nonprofit. That nonprofit money, your taxpayer money, was then being spent by that nonprofit, that non-government agency, NGO, to pay for protesters to protest anything moderately conservative, whatever the cause du jour of the day. And those protesters, well, I think if I was going to get paid $200, I don't know that I could do it, but $200, there's been times in my life where $200 for a few hours of protesting would have sounded pretty darn good. Matter of fact, there are still occasionally days where $200 for a few hours of going out to a protest would sound pretty darn good. You know, make $100 an hour, have to hold a sign. Also, something else I noticed, nature tends to tell us when something's truly toxic. Like some of the most toxic snakes are brightly colored. Poison dart frogs, they're neon colors. They're frogs that they're so toxic if you touch them, you die. And you find them in the Amazon rainforest. Well, the native peoples there, their equivalent of Indians, they would catch those frogs and then kill them and use their poison on arrows to kill other things. So those brightly colored frogs let everybody know that they're toxic. This happens in nature pretty regularly. Do you ever notice how so many on the left, they've made themselves as brightly colored as possible? Is there a parallel? Just saying. Seems to be one. If you don't care about America first, if you think this is a horrible country, if you think crime shouldn't be accountable, you think that there shouldn't be borders, you think that the government should make all choices, well, except about your gender. You know, you get to change that at any moment or time. Where does that lead us? If they truly get what they want, we've lost a civil society. Yeah, you have freedom, but it's kind of like you don't have the responsibility part. You just get to yell and scream about whatever you want as the government takes over. Well, we set up a system where the government's powers were defined through the Articles of Confederation. Article 1, all about defining the powers of Congress. Article 2, all about defining the powers of the presidency. Article 3, all about defining the powers of the judiciary. the judges. So the first part of that Constitution was about defining the powers of the government. And then the second part, those first 10 amendments, were about essentially defining the rights of the people, protecting the rights of the people. And they seem to have kind of a liberal hive mind. We're going to go ahead and take our last break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I'm going to try to be a little more positive for this last one. I have not been particularly positive today. It's been mostly a gripe session, and I will try to do better. All right, we're going to go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. So finishing up a little bit of that last part, we've, and including some on the right, have kind of sold out this country. In other words, we sold out anybody that was into manufacturing. We sold out all of our industry in a lot of ways. And then addicted our people to cheap, disposable stuff. We don't have stuff that lasts generations. I grew up around the antique business, and frequently I will have something in my hands that is already 150 years old, and it's better than something that you could go buy at Walmart today. And it's already had multiple generations use it. I'm not talking about something that's perfect. I'm talking about like a kitchen tool, a hand tool, a saw. They made stuff to last. We've gotten away from that. So it's sad that we've sold that out. Now, California, I do believe, and the country has a lot of hope right now. I believe we're on a precipice. Trump bought us some time. Trump gives us a lot of hope, but we're on a precipice. And we could fall into the abyss, but I'm faithful enough that I don't believe that's what's going to happen. What I believe is going to happen is that we're going to have something like the golden age that Trump is talking about. That we have not seen true prosperity. We saw a good portion of it during Trump 1, but this time he's prepared. And I think that we might have even more lasting prosperity. We're blessed here. I think we're going to see a time when patriotism matters again. The left, they seem to be doubling down on stupid, to quote Senator Kennedy. The right, well, not perfect. The Republicans, well, definitely not perfect. By far are the only ones talking any common sense. And I believe that if we get some things fixed like voter integrity, and there are some real signs that we can fix this. The technology's there. We can either go the technology route or, frankly, we can go back to paper ballots and precincts. Here in California, you've got a vote cheat by mail system. That cheat by mail system allows all kinds of potential fraud. Now, I'm not saying in any particular case there's fraud. I'm saying you've got a system that is not accurate, a system that is easy to manipulate. And if it's easy to manipulate and you eliminate the consequences of manipulating that system, which in 2016 California did, they made it so that while it's technically illegal to register to vote if you're an illegal, they eliminated, our state legislature eliminated the enforcement arm of that. So yeah, they can say, oh yeah, it's illegal for you and it's a crime to register to vote if you're here illegally. Nobody's going to enforce it because by law, they changed that. Well, we've got a ballot initiative that's coming here in California probably should be spreading, and how goes California goes the nation. And I believe that California can fix this. We overwhelmingly just passed a ballot initiative, Prop 36, that made crime again. Well, we now have a ballot initiative. They don't have a number for this proposition yet. Essentially, the idea is that we're going to put voter ID back in. Now, for those of you listening outside of California, ballot initiatives are ways for our people to be heard, since our legislature doesn't seem to want to hear us. It's a way for us to get a law through, essentially, that end runs around Lord Newsom and the jackals in Sacramento. This ballot initiative has two elements. The first one is that when you first register to vote, you have to prove you're a citizen. Now, if you have a real ID, that's real easy. If you have a passport, that'll take care of it. But you have to show and prove who you are. Now, our Secretary of State will say, oh, we already have to do that. No, I've been to the Secretary of State's website. You can opt out. You can say, oh, I don't have a social security number, so I don't have to give that. You can just completely opt out of that and still register to vote with no consequences. So if you could cheat with no consequences, do you think there might be people that would cheat? So that's the first element. When you first register to vote, and it would require everybody, if this ballot initiative passes, to prove that they're citizens. Essentially, it'd make everybody re-register. So it would clean the voter rolls. Number two, then when you go to vote, because a lot of people don't bother to vote, particularly on the right, let's face it, there are numerous communities that just don't show up as much as they should, as much as I want them to. And they don't step out and represent their values. But if people had more faith that their vote meant something, and you had to give ID, I think it'd make a difference. So you could look everything up in California and in most states as to whether somebody's voted. Do they regularly vote? Are they registered? How are they registered? Republican, Independent, or Democrat? So they know, for instance, if you don't vote regularly or you never vote in the midterms, somebody else could show up, and as long as they know your address and they can sign some signature that remotely in a tiny way looks like your signature, they could vote for you. Because we'd also, one of our other flaws is we have a signature check that is the most minor. Essentially, we've ordered people to look at the signatures and go, well, as long as it's close, sort of, kind of close. Well, it's written with the same hand, so it's good. That's how loose it is. Well, this could change the whole dynamic. Also, as I look around, I see more and more people waking up. For instance, even with all this tariff talk, Trump is still ahead. His poll numbers are up because more people are awake and they're not buying the BS. They're not looking at the protests and going, oh my God, the sky is falling. They're going, wait, you've been telling me the sky is falling now for months or years, depending on which state and where. And they're no longer ignoring, they're now no longer listening. They're beginning to ignore those voices that are screaming, it's an emergency. It's an existential threat to humanity, like climate change. If we don't change this now, and you need to give us a bunch of money and control of your economy, then everything's going to die. Well, now more people are awake to the climate scam. As we went through COVID, more people are realizing just because the government told you so. Use some common sense. Do your own research. I'd like you to believe that I'm right all the time, but the truth is I'm only right most of the time. And so you should do your own research. You should actually look at the Constitution. Great opportunities. We're in a digital age where pretty much anything you want to look up. If you want to know an answer to something, you can go the easy route and ask Siri, or you can type it in and start reading or watch videos. You can learn about all of the amazing possibilities. Folks, our country's worth it. Our freedom and prosperity are worth it. And most importantly, our liberty is worth it and needs to be defended. We're going to go ahead, and I thank you for this time and call it a day.